This is the BadgeBuilder operations tutorial. This tutorial assumes that you have already created a badge database with a card design and a number of different fields. When you first open up the program, you'll have two basic options that you'll want to do operationally. One which would be to reopen the existing database that you've just recently had open. In this case, it's the sample database. As you can see, it says reopen sample. The other option is that if you have another existing database that you'd like to open that was not the last database, then you can say open an existing badge database, and that will allow you to open up that particular IDC file. IDC being the extension that is native to the BadgeBuilder program. In our case, we're going to go ahead and say reopen sample, and by clicking on next, several things are going to happen. First of all, the database is going to open up, and the next thing that's going to happen is that we're going to be provided a security dialog that allows us to log in. If security isn't particularly important in your particular situation, then you can use the default username and password, which are master, represented right here, and ID card. We do recommend that you change this, though, because remembering that ID cards are specific probably to your business, your installation, your location, and you don't want any old person to be able to create a card that makes it look like they belong when they don't. So while you can keep the default username and password, we would certainly encourage you to change it. In this case, we are going to simply type in master and ID card. As long as you've entered a valid password, you'll see that the login button becomes available, and we're going to go ahead and log in. You're now seeing the full BadgeBuilder interface. You can see that our database is open here, and that we have an existing card design with information that is coming from the database that was created for the sample. For the most part, in a normal operational situation, you are only going to be performing a certain subset of the information or the options that are available in the program. So let's go through those very briefly. Most of those major operations are available directly from the toolbar. If you look up on the toolbar, you'll see that some things are grouped together. For instance, this button right here, which is the green badge with the red plus sign, is for adding a new record. And if you're ever not sure, you can look down near the bottom of the window, and it will tell you exactly what it is that that particular item does. If we go ahead and click on this new badge, new record, what we'll see here is that we have some databases that were defined, fields that were defined in our database that we can now fill in for this particular user. So if we put in a badge number and a department, it was been predefined for us, so we can select personnel and put in the person's name and perhaps enter their employee number. So that allows us to fill in all of the form-based data. Now if you look down below, you'll notice that under badge design there's a drop-down list, and what happens here is that in a database you can have an unlimited number of different card designs available to you. So if you have a card design for, say, guests, a card design for contractors, a card design for regular employees, one for custodians, however you'd like to divide up the card designs, you can have as many of those available to you in one database as you like. So in this case, we're going to stick with the sample entry, which happens to be number 0. Badge data changed allows you to do some fancy filtering later on down the line if you wish to determine whether you want to print cards that have been never been printed before. In this case, we want to leave that checked. The information about a record index and a photo file name don't exist simply because this record hasn't been created yet, and so the information for those doesn't exist. If we're happy with all the information, we can go down and say OK. Obviously, if you don't want to do that particular record, you can go ahead and hit cancel, or you can clear information out and start again. Buttons for now and all now are currently grayed out because they reference date and or time information that you can pull directly from the system, so that you don't have to put in today's date or the current time when you go to add a new record. That doesn't apply here because we don't have a date or a time field. So we're going to go ahead and say OK. When we do that, we get a brand new card up. Here's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which was the information that we'd selected. Here's the person's name. Here's their department that we selected. The one piece that you'll see that's missing, of course, is the picture. Now, when we go to take a picture, we have several different options of what we can take. Under normal circumstances, we are going to go up onto the toolbar, and we are going to use this button right here, which shows a picture of a scanner and a digital camera. This uses an interface called Twain, which is reportedly supposed to mean technology without an interesting name. But in any case, the idea of it is that you are able to go into a scanner or a camera and talk directly to it and actually be able to capture photos. And in this case, that's exactly what you would want to do. There are also some cameras, such as web cameras out there, that support an interface called WIA, or Video for Windows. They can sometimes be used interchangeably depending upon the application. And this is another method by which you can capture live video, depending on your particular piece of hardware. The third option that you have for capturing pictures is this one right here, the one we're going to actually use for this demonstration. This demonstration we're going to actually capture from a file. And this could be a file that was taken with a digital camera and downloaded to your local computer as a JPEG file. This could be a JPEG file or a bitmap file that was sent to you over a network or through an email or what have you. It allows you to access just a file-based image and be able to select it and then crop it and save it to your card. So for the purposes of this particular exercise, we're going to use this button. So if we go ahead and we click this, what will happen is that you will get up a bitmap capture window, which may be showing off the screen at the moment. So what we'll do is we will move this over into the viewable area. Okay, this is the bitmap capture area. What we're going to do now is we're going to click on the button that says bitmap, and when we do that, that's going to give us the opportunity to select a picture file off of our system. So let's look and see if we can find a suitable picture for this particular application. Okay, now we have a picture that we've selected from our system. As it turns out, it happened to be a woman instead of a man in this particular case. So we'll be able to show how we can change the information for this particular card in just a moment. So you'll see that this picture has come up. We have the ability to digitally zoom and digitally crop images when they come up, and this is true of whether you're capturing them from a Twain source like a digital camera, or whether it's a live video camera like a webcam, or in this case from a file. So I can move this box around. I also have the ability to crop it down, so I can take and I can actually drag at the edges and pull a particular area down to zoom in around a person's face. And you'll notice that if you draw on one edge, the other edge also moves, and this is to make certain that you keep the aspect ratio correct on the picture so that the person's face doesn't look stretched either horizontally or vertically. One of the optional features that you can take advantage of also is a tuning capability. This is an additional feature that you can purchase to go along with BadgeBuilder. And what that does is that allows you to be able to adjust some brightness, contrast, saturation, and hue on a picture. So if it's a little dull or the coloration is a little off, it allows you to adjust that. So we can actually slightly increase the brightness, we could slightly reduce the contrast or increase the contrast, reduce the saturation slightly if it's a little bit too heavy on color, and say OK. And that will make just some minor adjustments to the picture. If we haven't got the right picture, we can go back and actually select another picture. So let's do that now. If I go back to bitmap again, we get the opportunity to pick a different picture, and we'll go ahead and select this picture. Now we have the gentleman that we were actually looking for, Mr. John Doe. We'll now crop his image by drawing this in, moving the box around slightly. We'll say that the tuning is okay, so we won't work with the tuning at all. And when we're happy, we will go ahead and hit save. And sure enough, now that we have done that, the picture is shown up. So now we have a complete picture with our badge. So we have the information, we have the background, which was the part of the card design, and we also have John Doe's image ready to be printed. Now, the last thing that we would do in a typical operational situation after we have captured the information and we've captured the picture is that we would want to go ahead and print the card. And so we'll go over on the toolbar to the printer button. And when we get the printer button up, we get a dialog that gives us multiple different options for what it is that we'd like to do. Now, BadgeBuilder works with any Windows printer, so while many people will be working with a PVC card printer, a plastic credit card size printer that actually impregnates the plastic with dye. In this case, there's no reason why you couldn't use any particular printer, even something like an HP PhotoSmart inkjet type of printer, depending upon the kind of printing that you'd like to do. But you can select your printer by clicking on Printer Setup if you wish. In terms of printing, you have the option always to print either just the current badge or to print all the selected badges. Now, in this particular case, we have just the one badge that we want to print, so we're going to select current. But if you had a group or the entire database's worth of cards that you wanted to print, then you would want to go ahead and say all selected. One of the options that comes with BadgeBuilder, depending upon the version level that you get, is the ability to do double-sided badging, in which the backside of the card can have a design that is part of the overall card design, and also a printer that will allow you to actually print both sides of the card in one printing operation rather than having to do it in two operations. And so the side selection would apply down here if we were using double-sided printing. In this case, we're not. One of the other things that you may need to do, and we might try to make it easier for you, is to change the orientation of the printing, depending upon the type of card that you're printing. And in this case, our particular card, we're actually using a landscape print, not a portrait print. So we would actually want to change over to landscape. If your card was more vertically oriented, then you would want to choose the portrait selection. One of the other very important pieces to be aware of is the fact that you can adjust the way that the card or cards lay out on the page. Now, in the case of a card where it's going to be printed on a PVC card printer, the page is the card, is a plastic card, and so it's really a one-to-one relationship between the card design and the card that you're going to be printing on. But in the case of a paper printer, perhaps you might want to actually lay out the cards in a very different way, where you want to have multiple cards on one page. So we have the ability for you to lay out these cards. Now, there are a lot of various different options here, but the one that's usually the most important one is this button right down here, which is the alignment in both axes. And basically what this does is to automatically take whatever the particular layout is that you've specified, and try to fit the maximum number of cards, be it one or more, into the area that you've specified. So if we go ahead and we click on this, you'll see now that the cards that have been provided have been changed significantly so that they fit within the printable areas specified. And all of the margins and vertical gaps and so forth and rows and columns have all been adjusted automatically. And for the most part, that's the kind of thing that you would want to do. Even if you're printing on a regular PVC card printer, you would still want to do this once in order to accomplish that. If you want to, while the BadgeBuilder will remember the settings from time to time, from instance to instance of the program, but if you'd like to, you can also save this particular layout so that you can load it up again at any time in case somewhere along the way that something has changed or you need to get back to that exact layout, or you've specified some very specific margins and so forth. So let's look briefly at card technology. In this case, there are two different options that we have here. Again, depend upon the version of the program that you're running. But the program, BadgeBuilder, is capable of encoding magnetic stripes on the back of cards. Also important that you have the appropriate printer to do that. It has to have a mag encoding head in it to be able to do that. We don't have that in this situation for this particular example. That's why these are grayed out. The other thing that BadgeBuilder is capable of optionally doing is smart card encoding. Smart card encoding is something where instead of just some very simple information, much more detailed information with password protection and so forth can actually be read and written to a smart card. And a smart card might either be a area on of a card that actually has some gold foil lands where the information is actually mechanically transferred to the to the card, or it could be something that uses a wireless type of situation where there is an antenna in the card and a chip embedded right in the card. And BadgeBuilder is capable of encoding what's called MyFair smart cards, which are a contactless wireless smart card using MagicCard, Rio, and Tango printers. So if you're interested in either one of these technologies, if you're programming cards, we would encourage you to contact our sales department and talk to them more about those particular features. Lastly, just so that you know, there is always the ability for you to actually see the information about the printer as far as what the areas that you're going to be printing on and so forth. It will give you information such as the margins and the usable page area and so forth. So this information can be useful sometimes if it's a troubleshooting situation. But generally, all you're going to need to worry about is going to General and going to Layout. If you're perfectly happy with all of the selections that you're going to make, then you can simply go down and click Print. And when you print, your card will come out on your selected printer. That concludes the basic operations tutorial. We would encourage you to look at the other operations tutorials to learn more about some of the advanced features of the program, creating databases, designing cards, editing cards, and so forth.